Would you like to know more?
During the last 60 days, names like Occupy, 99%, Anonymous, and Socialist have been brought to your attention through the media, social networking sites, and your email. Everywhere you look, America's plunging into chaos. Our children have been accosted by the internet, subjecting them to a new attack, a very real attack. Campaigns are being waged for their young minds. Campaigns are being waged to exploit our frustration, to direct our anger, our sympathies, and to stand up for the American dream as it was defined by our parents, our grandparents, by generations of Americans before us. We're going into an election year. Civil unrest has erupted all over the globe. America has waged war for the last 8 years on 2 fronts. Our economy is in shambles. We no longer trust our government officials. Some of these officials want to make you believe war is imminent. International or civil war is imminent. Doomsdayers are speaking of 2012. Unemployment is at its highest levels in decades. We don't earn enough money. Our jobs have been shipped overseas. The environment and many more problems face us than ever before in our nation's history. People are talking at you, not to you. Something is broken, and people are trying to point the finger at what it is. Let's look at who is doing the pointing. Occupy Wall Street. This movement was founded by Kali Lawson and his nonprofit organization, adbusters.org, out of Canada. For a spontaneous show of emotion and protest, this movement was planned back in June when he registered OccupyWallStreet.org. The occupiers claim to have broken away from this man. They claim the Occupy movement has taken on a life of its own. In many ways, it has. Occupy protesters cannot seem to clearly define what they want. Protesters' signs range from denouncing government, the 1%, the banks, their student loans, and more jobs. Yet there remains a sinister undertone in the movement. You see flags of communism, signs of socialism, talk of an American autumn, talk of anarchy. The Occupy Wall Street founder, Kali Lawson, depicts these same topics in his magazine. We are not saying all occupiers share the same belief. We are not saying they are unified enough to have one message. We are saying that this message of communism, socialism, and anarchy gets through the loudest. If that is not the message you intend, then shame on you for not making your voices heard. While you are speaking, please answer these questions. How does sleeping in a park or marching down the street get your message across? You cost these municipalities more money they do not have that could go to the poor in that city. Instead, they pay to police you, to protect the very same freedoms you are protesting about. Many times under threat for their own lives by sociopaths your movement has attracted, and in some cases even invited or compensated. Why do you march? You cost private businesses money. You stop commerce. You cost hourly workers shifts they do not have to spare. You cause traffic jams which inconvenience the people going to work that pay for policing your protests. What does the Occupy movement have to hide? Why aren't these public general assemblies and strategy functions televised? Why do you keep the cameras out? Kali, why do they do that? Is it maybe because of what you are planning? Why do you insist on stopping commerce? Ladies and gentlemen, to those of you protesting capitalism, you are supporting it quite well by buying all those tents, sleeping bags, signs, clothing, camera equipment, and Guy Fawkes masks. Did you use your credit card? Many Americans agree that the banks are broken, that big corporations have too much power, but your elected officials have given them that power. Kali Lawson, how does Buy Nothing Day affect those small business owners whom you are also costing? Those same business owners already hurt by the recession that have to cut their employees' hours. Which brings us to the 99%. Your name by itself makes no logical sense. If your numbers reflect even in the whole populace of the Occupy movement, in the United States with a population of 300 million, you don't even make up the 1% you claim to be against. We are not happy about the banks either. For the most part, the bad guys are gone and have been gone since 2008. I agree, they do need to be prosecuted. The new guys are turning a profit for shareholders they answer to. You had a great solution in spirit, moving your money to community credit unions. However, this is a huge shit sandwich we must all take a bite of. It wasn't too long ago that all these mortgage-backed securities took a downward spiral. Mortgage-backed, which means some of you bought houses you could not afford, took out lines of credit for those new cars, those remodels, those vacations. You signed on the dotted line. No one wants to hear that part of the message. How can you speak for those that didn't? Members of our government need to be prosecuted. There are corrupt members of our government. Your movement is addressed all over the internet by an organization of hacktivists, a self-proclaimed collective of cyber terrorists exploiting the same freedoms they protest. This organization's name is Anonymous. They terrorize innocent people by releasing personal information, take it upon themselves to wage these operations, many of which were a failure. Operation Facebook, Operation Night of 1,000 Masks, Operation Buy Nothing Day. They do have one operation to their credit. They released information on those viewing child pornography. The man that started that should be applauded. He turned over the information to law enforcement. Your anonymous organization speaks of threatening governments, people, societies that do not agree with your thinking. American Autumn, as you have named the civil distress in the U.S., will not materialize. For those of us that despise Big Brother, he is here, very real, stealing your privacy and watching your every move on the internet. You do not know this enemy, yet he is one of the easiest enemies to defeat. Simply turn them off, unplug them. Do not view their videos or support their actions. Ignore them. Parents, pay more attention to your children's internet time, even though admittedly it is next to impossible. To those of you in the 99% and Occupy movements, realize what you are not achieving and what you are costing the people you claim to represent. Whether we like it or not, the system of government and commerce is not going away anytime soon, despite what you may think. The rest of us are simply dealing with this reality every day, going to work, and picking their candidates that support their issues. That can affect the changes so deeply needed by our country. Not your campouts, not your sit-ins, not your drumbeat, not your antagonistic behavior towards law enforcement officers that you readily and conveniently snap pictures of when they are forced to do their job. If you are unhappy with big corporations, boycott them. Or better yet, start your own company that can put them out of business and do it the right way for whatever right means to you. Create the jobs we need, the technologies we need to save this planet and our communities. Put those big companies out of business and put your profits in a community credit union if that is what you believe. You have this freedom, this right to become the 1% financially speaking. Do something positive and productive. Get focused. Go home. We have work to do. We have to invent the green technologies, provide goods to markets like China, and let's get our money back. Look into new markets. Become a global business. eBay even makes this possible for you to ship out of your garage to a customer in Australia. At this point, you've annoyed your fellow citizens. Your camps have become health risks, and they too have become separated by class. There are over 330 reported felonies: rape, theft, violence, communism, socialism, anarchy, drug use. They are all giving your movement a bad name. Your lack of a concerted message. The public once sympathized with you, once sympathized at the images we saw on the TV of police brutality, of tear gas, of riot. But our sympathy has turned to anger as your lack of message, your continued protest have become cumbersome. We as a people have the power and freedom because of generations before us. We are making decisions in our votes that will affect our children, just as we are paying now for some of our decisions to put Obama in office. Choose your candidates carefully, for there is a war going on out there. If you haven't yet figured out the Occupy Party is a left movement, get a clue by the politicians that endorse them. President Obama has been quoted as saying, "I understand the frustrations being expressed in the protests. In some ways, they are not that different from some of the protests that we saw coming from the Tea Party." Vice President Joe Biden has been quoted as saying, "That is the core of what you're seeing on Wall Street." And that's what started, by the way. There's a lot in common with the Tea Party. The Tea Party started, why? TARP. They thought it was unfair. We were bailing out the big guy. Except, Mr. Vice President, the Tea Party directed its protests not towards Wall Street, but towards big government. Nancy Pelosi, Elizabeth Warren, Debbie Schultz, Sherrod Brown, John Larson, Barbara Lee, and Maxine Waters. This woman claimed to originate the Occupy idea. Are you getting it yet? Wake up, America. You're in the middle of a shell game. You're in the middle of an information war. Pick your own way. Have your own voice. To those of you at Occupy Wall Street, we already know what you're going to say. Go out and talk to OWS protesters. We did. If you view our additional videos, you will see that for yourself. The communists are also vying for our failure. Why is Russia Today the premier news agency on YouTube featuring the Occupy unrest? Al Jazeera? Don't believe everything you see, including this. Do your own research. Find out the facts for yourself. Facilitate the liberties of others to ignore your protests, to not agree with you, to not agree with your movement, and take your fight to the ballot box, just as many fights have came from civil unrest in the past. To the American citizens, this election is going to be a dirty fight. Already the Democratic Party is coming out with negative ads against Romney, who's not even been chosen as the Republican candidate as of yet. You are having your fears, angers, and emotions played on by both the media, Occupy, and other groups that want you to listen, and above all, want you to vote. We do not represent a political party. We do not represent a political opinion. We are simply Americans frustrated with the systems and the powers that be, and moreover, with the Occupy 99% and anonymous movements that take over our airwaves, that bully our public officials, that do not have a concerted message, they do not have solutions, all they have are concerns which they voice loudly and range all over the board. We simply ask you to exercise the freedoms that have been afforded you, to make your own decisions, to pick your own candidates, and moreover, be aware.
Would you like to know more?